Today I'd like to tell you a story to share my journey as a nurse and how I found my voice and passion for patient care. It's a journey that has helped me create a culture, a vision, and team that is able to deliver safe, compassionate, and quality care that patients deserve. When I talk about my passion for patient care and keeping my patients safe, it's sometimes hard for me to hold back tears. It's personal. These tears come from the joy I get from working shoulder to shoulder with my staff. It's from walking into the patient's room and assuring them that they are safe. It's knowing that our team will provide them with the care, love, and respect that they deserve. But these tears also come from hard and challenging experiences. My journey has involved recurring struggles and internal conflicts between my passion and finding and elevating my voice. And although the passion seemed to come naturally, the voice took time, the struggle was real, and the work is ongoing. Let me talk about my passion. I love to laugh. I grew up watching MASH. The humor, the passion you saw with that Hawkeye Radar, Hot Lips, Klinger, and all the rest of the characters had for their patients, the adrenaline rush when the chopper landed, and the family and team they developed to care for the patients to survive each day motivated me to work in healthcare. And when I look back, not only was the show one of the reasons I chose nursing, I see how it helped me understand how to lead with passion, to understand the unit is my family, and that the humor is a necessary component in the care of patients who are critically ill with cancer. I graduated from nursing school in 1985. I had hair. And upon graduating, still watching reruns of MASH, I knew I wanted to work in critical care. A few years into my nursing career, I landed a job in an ICU that was like working a MASH unit. I worked in a surgical trauma ICU during the peak of the AIDS epidemic. On a daily basis, I cared for patients whose lives were taken from them during the prime of their life. This was not easy work, especially emotionally. I soon recognized the need for humor and family to survive. So I developed a close bond with several of my staff, and we laughed together, cried together, and supported each other. We became a family and realized the importance of a team. As many of you know here, the first few years of nursing require focus on technical skills and how to survive each day. The empathy is there, but it is often pushed to the side as the technical skills are developed. But for each of us, there's a moment or a patient who triggers, registers, lifts one's passion for patient care. For me, that moment came when I was caring for John Doe. John Doe was a homeless man without family. He was HIV positive, he had been viciously assaulted, and had a poor prognosis. The consensus was that John would not survive his injuries, especially with the severity of his lung injury, with his AIDS diagnosis and his compromised immune system. However, the ICU team wanted to keep pushing hard and even put him on a clinical trial. John did not have family or friends or anyone to advocate for his wishes, and it did not seem dignified or safe to aggressively escalate his care, especially placing him on high-frequency ventilator clinical trial. As his nurse, I was his only advocate. I became his family. And after many passionate discussions, it was decided to place John on comfort care. And when we began to withdraw support, it was I who held his hand while he died. I started to see beyond the technical skills of nursing, and my passion for patient care started to surface. I realized behind the grief what an honor and privilege it is to be a part of a patient's end of life. I learned the importance of advocating for your patients, especially when they are so vulnerable, to honor and provide compassionate and safe care, and to ensure your patients have a dignified death. This experience with Joan solidified my desire as I had a role and passion that every patient deserves quality, compassionate, and safe care. As a result of this experience, I became more introspective in my practice and developed my own personal standards, setting the bar high in my nursing. First, I believe that every patient should be cared for with dignity, compassion, and respect that I would expect for my husband, my children, or my parents. Secondly, I needed to find confidence with my care and my team to confidently encourage a parent, their spouse, or child of a patient that they can go home and rest because their loved one would be safe in our care. Thirdly, my patient care involves narrating my care to the patient and family, taking the time necessary to answer their questions, ensure they know their plan, to help eliminate the fear and anxieties while being so vulnerable as a patient, and to always provide accurate information. While there are a lot of technical nurses, and yes, you want them as your nurse, I also vowed to be one that is empathetic and compassionate caregiver, to take 5 minutes each day to sit down with the patient and their family and listen and understand their journey and to make a personal connection. I was going to be a nurse that gets it, not just the science, but the art of nursing. After a dozen years at the bedside, my passion needed to find a voice. As a bedside nurse, I became an excellent and competent caregiver, but I noticed issues that could potentially harm patients and learned that staff were afraid to speak up. I believed I could make a difference. But when I brought issues to the attention of leaders, I quickly learned that there were several canned responses that I would often hear, such as, quote, "That's the way we've always done it," quote, "Don't worry about it, I'm sure it won't happen again," or even, "What did you do wrong? Why did that happen?" I learned quickly why staff were afraid to speak up. While finding my voice simultaneously, serendipitously, I began accepting leadership positions. I hoped to elevate the voice of nursing and became more influential in providing safe, compassionate, and quality care. As a result, my journey took me across the country to some of the best institutions in this country, working as a patient safety officer, a director of nursing practice, and a quality and regulatory affairs manager. However, despite my knowledge and experience, bringing greater attention to safety issues did not always resonate well, and so the challenge began. The canned responses were more frequent, and some of the experiences were, at times, humiliating and degrading. For example, I raised an issue at a leadership meeting that I knew made the organization vulnerable, and I was then scolded in front of my peers for bringing it up in the meeting. Another time, during a hallway conversation, I raised the importance of safety metrics for the safety of our patients to a physician, and his response was to yell and berate me in the hall in the middle of a clinic. I have also been told that, quote, "Maybe you're not a good fit," because I raise systematic issues that puts patients at risk. And finally, when bringing up errors, I've had supervisors that say, quote, "Did you punish the nurse?" as opposed to just asking the questions, "Why do you think this happened? And what do you think that we could do to have prevented this?" The experience were not isolated to just one organization. I felt my passion and voice for nursing being thwarted. And even though there was joy in my daily work and my leadership roles, and despite some excellent experiences and successes, the battle scores of advocating for my staff and improved patient care became a political football. Each day became a walk through a minefield. What was safe to say? Who could I trust? And who truly wanted to work with me and walk on my journey? Wanting to keep the patients and staff safe was like Sisyphus, and I could no longer push the boulder up the hill. I finally decided it was time to go back to the bedside. At the same time, I made the decision to go back to the bedside. My husband and I were in our third year for caring for my mother. We had decided to put family first, and so we decided to move here to Salt Lake City. I interviewed for the CVICU nursing position. But as fate would have it, I interviewed with Colleen and with Julia, and after the interview, they said, and I'm paraphrasing, "Okay, now that we've interviewed you for the CVICU position and looking at your resume with all your clinical and leadership experience, let's talk about another position in our organization that we would want you to consider interviewing for." Although I really wanted to go back to the bedside, they were pretty persuasive, and within 30 minutes, I was walked up to Huntsman and had an impromptu interview with Sue Childress for the manager of the Huntsman Intensive Care Unit. And within 24 hours, I had several interviews that included Estelle Harris and the staff of the HICU. I had a wealth of information that I wanted to share with an organization who wanted innovative leaders and who embraced a culture of safety. But to be honest, I was scared. I learned a lot over the years, and I wanted someday to bring the skills and knowledge of leadership, safety and quality, and nursing practice to the bedside. But I also had some bad experiences and didn't want the risk of repeating them again. I knew that the nurse manager position is probably the hardest job in the hospital. The manager is sandwiched above by your director, the C-suite, and their expectations, and below by the expectations of staff, patients, and family, and a whole lot more in between. The manager is responsible for setting the tone and dealing with a broad range of issues for clinical and patient care, human resources, finance, regulations, and performance improvement. Finally, the nurse manager is responsible for ensuring exceptional patient care while keeping our patients and staff safe. It's a balancing act, and when you know all this, who would really want to do this job? But I wanted to bring my experience back to the bedside. I wanted to develop a unit that I knew could provide exceptional and safe patient care where a team could thrive, be successful, and happy that would become an exemplar unit for an organization. And so I shared my experience and vision during my interviews. Everyone I spoke with was sincere. They were engaged and supportive. So I took a leap of faith and accepted their offer. And anyway, who could say no to Sue, Julia, and Colleen? So here's how I incorporated my journey, passion, and experience into developing what I believe to be one of the most impassioned and successful teams at the university, the Huntsman Intensive Care Unit. First, I must acknowledge how fortunate I have been that Huntsman, the University of Utah, and the Critical Care Service Line have allowed me to share and support my passion and vision for patient care and team development, and to spread my wings and create a culture that builds upon my previous experiences and places patients and staff and safety at its core. I put my fears and past experiences aside. I acknowledged my experience and knowledge and embraced trust and took another step in my journey toward the integration of my professional, personal passions, ethics, and dreams. I've incorporated 3 key components into the work to build successful teams: shared governance, transparency and leadership, and a belief that patient safety and safety in general is something that everyone can wrap their arms around. However, when speaking to staff about safety, quality, metrics, rates, percentages, etc., their eyes glaze over. So I decided to put safety in my back pocket and put my initial efforts in shared governance and transparency and leadership. I believe that safety will fall into place. One way I learned this was when I led an organization through the journey to Magnet. I quickly learned that the benefit of becoming a Magnet hospital was actually the journey and not the trophy of becoming a Magnet organization. As key players in this journey, I believe nursing needed to feel safe and have a voice, and safety was one of the results. And so I embraced the power of shared decision-making and the principles of shared governance. To the credit of Huntsman organization, the structure was already established, and the HICU had a clinical practice council. However, the challenge of this structure is understanding that the role of the manager will shift from managing to leading the team. Having confidence that the staff are the experts in their daily care and operation of the unit, and providing them with the responsibility and the ownership of the unit. This is not easy. It's hard work and requires coaching and trust, but it's the right thing to do. I have empowered my clinical practice council, and the rewards have been amazing. Finally, let me touch on my philosophy about being a transparent leader and what it means to me being visible. Working shoulder to shoulder with my staff, putting on my scrubs and doing the work, or actually their work. Transparency does not mean invisible. On the contrary, it means being very visible. It's the invisible leaders that tend to be ineffective. When someone makes an error, a transparent leader has a conversation that goes down two paths, asking two questions. Why do you think this happened? And what do you think that we could do to prevent it from happening again? It does not mean going down the blame path. Instead, ask them what you can do to make them successful. And if they filled out an RL, thank them for that. It takes character and courage. Being transparent means sharing with your staff the good, the bad, and yes, the ugly. I have a blog that I try to put out each week. When I started, I made a promise to staff that I wanted them to be at the bedside as much as possible and not to check email. So I send out one email each week with a link to my blog. It celebrates their successes. I share information that is necessary. I share the hard truths, the RLs, so we can learn from our mistakes. And I share the fun stuff that we do outside of our work. My journey has not been easy, but neither is the journey in changing a culture or leading a team. But returning to the sitcom MASH, I have found my passion. My team has become my second family, and together we endure challenges, the successes, and the grief that comes with nursing in an oncology intensive care unit. And we lift each other up, providing safe care with smiles, deep compassion, and the knowledge that our team has each other's backs for the benefits of our patients and their families. This team is what brings me strength, hope, humility, and what brings me to work each day. There will always be challenges, and because of that, there will always be journeys. But it is the beauty of a team and an organization united in a common purpose that keeps me motivated. It keeps me humble and willing to take another step day after day after day. So thank you. Thank you for listening to my story and being part of my journey.